So then the last thing would be, typically run into this more in the commercial setting, the difference between cast stone and Arriscraft, AKA calcium silicate masonry. Cast stone, oh gosh, this is heavier than I thought. A lot heavier than I thought. Is something like this. This is a keystone, like the beer. You used to see these on like every single house built in the 90s. They would go in the middle of the window, above the window, to hold a jack arch. Cast stone is again, a concrete-based product, or sorry, I should say cement-based product. It's Portland cement, a bunch of additives, color, formed, cured, fired, sent. So it's a Portland cement-based product that sometimes gets confused with a calcium silicate-based masonry unit. A calcium silicate-based masonry unit is what it sounds like, made from calcium silicate. Well, calcium silicate is chemically and structurally the exact same as the natural limestone that is quarried out of the ground every single day. It has been quarried for thousands of years. They have just figured out a way to actually make it. Produce it. So company Arriscraft, US-based company, they've got a plant in Georgia and a plant in Ontario, Canada, I believe. Cast stone and calcium silicate, while they can look very similar, behave extremely differently when in the wall. So basically there's two very common phrases that get thrown around a lot. Concrete is always going to shrink, or any sort of cement-based product is always going to shrink. Any sort of clay-based product, a brick, is always going to grow. So the smallest a brick ever is in its lifespan is the day it comes out of the kiln. From then on, you're talking micromillimeters, but it is constantly growing from the moisture in the air. It's just absorbing that. It just is what it is. Calcium silicate behaves more like clay. So when you've got buildings that have maybe calcium silicate masonry units on the bottom and brick above, where those two products touch, there doesn't need to be any separation because they're going to behave similarly over time. It's the polar opposite with any sort of cast stone unit. Because it's a cement-based product, it's going to shrink, the brick's going to grow, and you are going to get cracking and all sorts of issues at that point where they meet. You see it all the time on windowsills or headers above windows, or again, you drive around, you look at a ton of strip malls, strip centers around, anywhere around Richmond, you'll see calcium silicate or even cast stone based unit at the base and then brick above it. But there's extremely different detailing that goes into each. And so what we run into sometimes when working with these designers and architects is, hey, if you want to use Arriscraft, there's actually an entirely different ASTM. If you're saying you're a calcium silicate unit, you have to hit all of these marks. It has to be X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3, and then you can call yourself a calcium silicate masonry unit. Same with cast stone. If you want to say you're cast stone, you have to hit all of these different marks. Regardless, if you have cast stone meeting brick, you've got to create separation there. So you have to put in what's called a slip plane, and it's essentially a layer of polymer plastic almost that separates the cast stone from the brick so that they can move independently over time. But from a specification and design point of view, we'll often see in the spec, it'll say cast stone Arriscraft. That's okay depending on the detailing behind the building. If you've got Arriscraft in a specification and you've designed the building for Arriscraft, and then someone comes in and says, hey, I can get this cast stone cheaper, well, that's great, but you now have to redo a ton of the detailing behind the scenes. Oftentimes that means more structural tying, control joints. Control joints are basically like you'd see in a driveway. You see a big line down a driveway, a big driveway. That's basically where you want that concrete to crack. That's all you're doing you're controlling where the crack happens. So cement-based products, concrete-based products, they have control joints. Brick have expansion joints. Again, you're saying, I know this brick's going to expand and this is where I want it to happen. So there's guidelines when designing a building of where you need to have expansion joints, like at a corner. You have to have at least 4 feet from one side and at least 10 from the other. And then it's every 20 feet, I believe. I could be wrong, I'd have to spot check that, but I think it's every 20 feet on a long stretch wall. If we're looking at a set of plans and we see, hey, there are no expansion joints in this, we'll reach out to the architect and say, hey, there's none in your drawings. what's going on. And oftentimes they'll say, yeah, it's in the scope for the mason that they have to put in expansion joints. You will see jobs, especially older jobs, brick jobs that have been around for 50 plus years now that did not have expansion joints. You'll go to a corner and you'll see that brick is literally, because you've got two brick meeting like this, they're pushing against each other and starting to pop that corner out. And so that's what happens over years and years and years and years.